Blessings, brothers and sisters. It's me, Lori Ann Spagna from LoriSpagna.com to speak with you briefly today about the New Age deception and false lights and false saviors. So this is a particularly important conversation to be having these days in light of all the newest information and energy that's bringing more and more people into the light, and yet at the same time has not been developed or discerned properly so that we can actually ultimately develop our discernment. So what do I mean by all of this? First, let's go over the concept of the New Age deception. The New Age deception almost always includes what we call false lights and false saviors. And it's generally a program or an energetic bandwidth of consciousness that encourages us to be always positive all the time while still sort of tolerating mediocrity or the mediocrity of existence, to just be positive and be happy and accept what is with happiness and optimism, even though what is really mediocrity. And why we call it mediocrity is that it's not fit for gods, because we are all gods in bodies. We are all awakening to the consciousness that we are aspects of one divine source, and that divine source is infinite resource, infinite love, infinite wisdom, infinite omnipresence, infinite abundance, infinite opulence. And so we are aspect of that, and we have access to that infinite, and we're not meant to settle for mediocrity. So the false light programs and New Age deception typically encourage us to be all positive all the time, and very often just sweep under the carpet anything that's upsetting us or troubling us or bothering us, or not face our shadow aspects or the shadow aspects of this physical reality, which may include those kinds of things which are being widely censored on the collective mass media. Censorship is amok, right? Because that's part of the false light the New Age deception and the false light. And one of the ways it shows up hugely is in what we call savior programs. So saviors, we've seen them as world presidents in the United States. We sometimes see them as government officials or religious officials. Sometimes a savior could be someone of the, who's coming forward to save us in our financial troubles, or to save us, or it's the children coming forward who are going to save us because the adults don't know how to do it, or it's always someone out there who's a savior, or the coming of the second coming, or, there's a savior program running, and everyone's always looking for a savior. Maybe the saviors are the ETs, the benevolent ETs, or maybe the saviors are the Starseeds, or maybe the saviors are someone else out there, right? And very often it also comes with these false light programs, which include programs associated with, one of the most prominent ones is the Ashtar Command. And I apologize for those of you who love Ashtar Command, but one of the most common things that comes through Ashtar Commands is these false promises and dangling carrots. That's also part of the New Age deception. So dangling carrots and false promises always promise that there's going to be some better, brighter future out there, somewhere in the future. And Ashtar Command is notorious for that. The Ashtar Command also typically makes people a lot of promises that everything's going to get better, or that you're somewhere on a ship. You exist on a ship on Ashtar Command as some incredible scientist or some incredible being who is saving the planet and saving the world, but they're there in your mediocre life, where you're stressed out, full of anxiety, worry, and fear about the future, and you have no money and you can't survive. Like, that's very common with Ashtar Command. They make a lot of promises that never get fulfilled. That's a false light program. And false light programs are not just limited to Ashtar Command. False light programs come in the way of a lot of beings in the non-physical who come in and say the world, everything's bright and rosy and perfect, and you are love and light, and you never have to concern yourself with any problems because it's all love and light anyway. Now, false light programs will come forward in the form of different forms of false teachers as well, even in the physical world. Oftentimes, these are people who are what we call spiritual entrepreneurs, or just people who will sell you like products to spiritually enhance your life without actually giving you the real tools. They might do energy clearing for you, but they won't teach you the tools of how to do it for yourself, or perhaps they won't necessarily replace what they might clear with something that is of source or higher frequency. And when they don't, they're basically creating a codependent relationship where you're reliant on them. Lots of psychics are famous for doing this. A lot of gurus are famous for doing this. Not all gurus, of course, not all psychics, not all healers, but they are out there. So you have to develop your discernment to know, and if they're promising you something that you just can get if you keep coming back, or if the promise is somehow something off in the distance or the future or totally conditional, that's something to be really navigating. Or if they're telling you only all positive all the time, that's usually a false light deception and part of the new age deception. Very challenging, of course, during these times when there are so many people awakening and so many people representing, in different ways, and we all have our roles to play, and we all have something significant to offer. But part of what we're learning during this time is how to navigate successfully with our discernment, navigating our way to the higher, pure frequencies. The other part beyond saviors and false lights in the New Age deception, the all positives, is when people tell you you don't have to do your spiritual work, which is basically encouraging a form of spiritual bypassing. So they'll tell you just be love and be light, but they won't encourage you to dig under your own energetic field to uncover from within yourself wherever you may be unconsciously, harboring resistances or energetic blocks or beliefs or belief systems or patterns or ways of thinking, believing or behaving, or emotional entanglements that are keeping you in the density. So the way that kind of thing shows up from a lot of this sort of false light programming is you're around your light worker group or tribe, or you're on your retreat and everything's love and light, and then when you go home you still can't function in the world. You're still having relationship problems, or you're still having challenges with money, even though you go to these retreats and everything's all love and light, or you're told over and over again how much full of love you are, but you can't really function in the world, or something is still highly debilitated, whether it's money or relationship or job or career or health, whatever it is. These are often really significant of people who go to retreats and have these love and light experiences, but then find themselves, still unable to cope in some way. And what's happening in that is that they're carpet sweeping. I call it carpet sweeping, or they're spiritual bypassing, and they're not really looking at their shadow aspects. So when they leave those love and light communities, they have these problems are still prevailing in their lives. The reason we do this work, yes, okay, we want a spiritual connection. We want to have worth and value and love and cultivate all of our connection with the divine. But we do it also to improve the quality of our lives on earth for ourselves and for one another. And if that's not happening in your spiritual circles, it's probably time to revisit whether or not you've been trapped or caught in some kind of all positive false light scenario where it's all love and light all the time. You're not necessarily being encouraged to really process your shadow aspect or shadow aspects, right? Those are the unconscious parts of us that are keeping us in the density. And those things will always show up as some form of pushback, resistance, struggle, denial, and those things exist in all beings. So no false light program will exclude that. Those aspects are very significant for us. So I hope that makes sense. We can't get through our ascension journey if we're spiritually bypassing. And false light programs tend to encourage us to spiritually bypass. And false leaders or false gurus or false authorities will often, even in the love and light community, will often say that. We have to do the inner excavation to really clear out our core pillar, to really resonate in the higher realms, and to really access our greatest gifts, and especially to really be improving the quality of our lives on Earth in all areas of life, including our contribution to the greater good of all, and how we serve and contribute to humanity. Now, one of the other parts, and the reason I referenced even like Ashtar Command, is that many of the false lights will show up as false beings. And in some cases, this affects us our human self, because we'll start believing that we were somebody, sometimes who we weren't. In other words, a lot of times you have this show up in the reality. You'll meet people who think they were Jesus in another lifetime, or they think that they were, Mary Magdalene. Or it's one thing to say, you have an essence of that, and you have an aspect of that soul consciousness, and you do. Everyone does. It's another thing to think that you are actually the being when 20 people are claiming they were the being, or 50 people, or 100 people. That's usually a false light program running. And so we have to clear that out of our unconsciousness as well. That makes us want so badly to believe that we're someone so important or significant, and that we need to be someone else to be that, because we're important and significant because we exist. And that's reason enough, right? So that's another aspect of how false light programming shows up. It might be that some being represents to you, and you perceive this being or this magnificent being, and you think that it's you, or, this is part of developing discernment. It's a very challenging path for the adept who's awakening and really coming into the fullness of the multidimensional aspects of who we are. The other aspects that I want to bring up about false light programming and the New Age deception has a lot to do with this concept of fifth dimension and beyond, third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, and beyond. So when we talk about the fourth dimensional reality, what we're really talking about, at least from my definition and perspective and how I teach it, is that we're becoming aware that we are much more than physical beings, right? In third dimension, we're physical beings, and we are believing and perceiving ourselves to be only physical. And most people who are living only in third dimensional reality are not yet awake and aware to all the vastness of everything, the unlimited aspects that exist in non-physical. And as we start awakening to that and start working with that and navigating that non-physical and integrating more of it, we start realizing, now this is fifth dimensional reality. I'm working with angelics and higher realms and the non-physical. I might, people start off as a Reiki master or healers or animal communicators, or start awakening their gifts more and more, energy healers, etc. Our intuitive, empathic nature starts coming online, and that's how we know we're like in 5D. But now we still have to work with all our shadow aspects. We don't just stop there, because we are multidimensional beings. So 5D will be very much like 3D in a lot of ways if you haven't done your unconscious clearing. And even as you start doing all that unconscious clearing and healing and navigating your own unconscious, and resolving all of these so-called energy blocks, limited beliefs, limited thinking, limited ways of being and perceiving that are associated with that old third-dimensional paradigm, as you do that, you start awakening more of your multidimensional self. You start moving way beyond the physical world. You realize, and this is truth, this really is truth, 5D is only a jumping off portal. You never leave your body behind. You're not going somewhere else. You're integrating the non-physical with the physical, and you're also clearing out all densities associated with 3D. So the New Age deception is that somehow you're going to get to 5D and everything's going to be airy-fairy, hunky-dory, and that's it, you've arrived. It's not an arrival point. It's a landing spot and a jumping off point energetically. And it doesn't happen outside of you. It's not somewhere you go to. It's something that is awakened from within you, birthed within you, reclaimed, recalled, because it exists within you energetically. It's like vibrational attunement to it. So you're not going somewhere, right? You're not leaving your body, and you never complete. It's infinite, right? We're multidimensional beings, and as we continue this journey, we up level, we clear, we heal, we resolve, we transmute, we transform, and each time we do, as we continually elevate, we become more and more of the richness and the fullness of who we truly are. And here's the thing, you, all of us, we are multidimensional beings. We exist as a being of consciousness in a physical form, but we also exist as consciousness at all levels and all layers, all dimensions, everywhere and anywhere where consciousness exists, which is everywhere, we exist too. We just might not be identifying as our personality self at those levels and layers. So part of the jumping off point from 5D is in expanding into more of our multidimensional being, our multidimensional nature. And so this is why I call this the New Age deception, is that you don't stop at 5D. You keep expanding, elevating, up-leveling, because it's infinite. We are infinite beings, awakening to the infinite nature of our consciousness. And as we do so, it's just so highly important that we navigate with intelligence and discernment, and we understand the concepts of the New Age deception, which exists both in the conceptual plane of existence, within the mental plane of our awareness, within our energetic and emotional space, and in the physical world, because there are deceivers out there, misleaders, and they show up on our world governments, our television sets, our organized religions, and even in the spiritual community as so-called sometimes gurus or leaders, or sometimes they even call themselves walk-ins and light workers too. So we have to use the highest levels of discernment as we navigate our reality, as we find our way. And here's what I can say for sure. As you're navigating, the highest, clearest people will never put themselves in a hierarchical system with you. They will never make themselves superior to you or more advanced than you. They will recognize you as another aspect of Source Creator God consciousness. They will recognize you as a version of their own selves. And you will generally feel uplifted positively by them, sometimes triggered by them, but only to the degree that their light could trigger some aspect of your own density that's waiting to be revealed so that you can resolve it and transmute it. And then as you blossom more and come into the light, you recognize that that was what that was. Ultimately, all beings, all of us, we are love awakening to ourselves. And so this pivotal time of using our divine discernment and navigating these so-called false light programs where there are saviors and New Age deception and all of that stuff, you know, the desire to be attached to all positives all the time, which will only block us and limit us from our greatness. This is what this is about. So the final point I just want to make is that as we are willing to reveal those shadow aspects to us, including the things we resist, that we deny, that we sweep under the carpet, that we struggle with, that we refuse to acknowledge, that we push against, whatever those things are, what all that does when we finally accept and embrace those things, we transmute them into love, is that we elevate into more of the greatness, the magnificence of who we all truly are. And then ultimately we have the opportunity to create a better life on earth for ourselves and one another, all of our brothers and sisters, and the whole of humanity. So I hope that's helpful to you. That is the ultimate point of being able to navigate this stuff. And I so hope that serves you in your most benevolent, best ways. And please do stay in touch and come over to LoriSpagna.com for more information and energy on this. And of course, as always, if you like this, it was helpful to you, let me know how it was. I love to hear from you in the comments section, and subscribe to the channel so you can stay posted for future updates. Okay, until next time, I'm sending you all so much love and wishing you your most benevolent best. Okay, bye-bye.